The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group. Access Fort Wayne is a department of the Allen County Public Library. If you or anyone you know might be interested in making a television show, please call 260-421-1250.
Welcome to the Cashman Mind, Body, Spirit Show. I even have a guest with us today, and we have a very specific subject today, and our guest is Angelo Strother. Angelo, what type of, I know you're sort of semi-retired now, but what type of work did you do?
My last project was with Thamani, import and export.
Import and export?
Yes, sir.
Of about anything or industrials? Or?
Actually, we have a patent in import and export. It just recently converted from paper filing to electronic filing.
To electronic filing. Well, it sounds very interesting. And the subject I'm going to refer to and gather, and I've gathered a lot of information out of a book I encourage all of you to read. The library, the internet, doesn't cost very much. The name of it is Black Health. African Americans, Black Americans, whatever term. Black Health Matters. The vital facts you must know to protect your health and that of your loved ones. Health is being treated and has for centuries difference among people of different races, ethnic origins, and let's be open-minded and review this a little bit today, and I'm going to ask your opinion now and then and see what you think. This book is written by Richard W. Walker, and I don't agree with everything he says in the book, especially about how to correct it, but 90% of it is I would totally agree with, and who would agree with everything that I say? So that's okay. And let me just read the back of his book a little bit. Black Health Matters. It's no secret that the black community tops the list of groups afflicted by hypertension, stroke, diabetes, heart disease, kidney failure, cancer, and I could go on, and I refuse to accept that. I think we need to teach people how to avoid that, how to treat it properly. But there's so much disparity in the medical system. We don't have a national health that treats everyone the same, for example, that I'm going to review that a little bit today. And any ideas that you might have, I gladly listen to. So Angelo, let's get started.
Yes.
And so there is a great difference, actually, in the death rate and illness rates among races and ethnic groups. And you say to yourself, why? Well, for one thing, the history is a lot different. Blacks came originally, a lot of them from Africa. They've been through slavery. Over the last 150 years, they had black hospitals, black medical schools. Many now on Medicaid, all being treated differently, which I'm not in agreement with. I think we should all be treated the same. But let's review why this happened. the CDC says one of the differences is that many more live in poverty. Well, that may be true, but it's not as bad as it used to be. That their access to good food is not the same for all of us. And I think you'd agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah, that many don't have a good market to buy the food at. They've got to go to a gas station, and that results in people buying a lot more processed food, for example. Also, the research has been different from whites to blacks, for example. They didn't even research, the black population didn't do any health studies in them until recently. Yeah. And just to think of myself, when I took my residency in neurosurgery, I took it in Washington, D.C., and I went to a hospital which had largely black people in it. Many had high blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes, and brain hemorrhages like I've never seen since I left D.C. What's interesting, one of the first times that I drove to this public hospital from Georgetown, where I was mainly located, mainly a private institution, I ran across a big crowd in front of the White House and the Washington Monument, and I didn't read the paper every day because I'm busy working. And so I got out of the car and stopped, and you know what? This actually happened. It was August 13th, 1963. Martin Luther King and other speakers were giving their talk. I was there. Would you believe that?
Yes, sir. Come from.
And then I went to DC General, where I saw these horrible, horrible cases of high blood pressure and hemorrhages. I didn't see those at the main Georgetown Hospital among the white people. So I became very experienced, and maybe that's part of the reason I'm here today to discuss this subject. I mean, I'm talking about blood pressure. It's like 300 and 400.
Whoa.
Yeah, I've never seen it since. So I probably really was entering the tail end of the South almost. You know, it's interesting. And let me give you a quote. And let me give you a quote here from Martin Luther King, since we're on the subject. Of all forms of inequality, injustice in health is the most shocking and the most inhuman because it results in physical injury and in many physical death and disability. From what I was looking at and considering that I attended one of his speeches, to me that's a very interesting quote, which I got out of this great book. So this goes back hundreds of years, but I say, let's not spend all of our time looking backwards where we could blame everything on genealogy. Let's look forward. Let's solve this problem. What would it take to solve this problem? And I think there's some of us who've been injured in the past, which you could say, you too, Rudy, because when I was a little child, I lived in Nazi Germany. But I never let that dominate my life. I followed my own inspiration. Like the day my mother showed me a picture of a doctor in a white coat, and I said, that's what I'm going to do for a living. And that's what I've pursued. And even at age 39 for the 46th time, I still pursue. You see my point? So looking backwards is not the answer necessarily to life. Read things, go on the internet, gain some information, listen to other people, and look forward, because we have to assume some self-responsibility too for what we eat. Nutrition is the most important thing to good health. If we're eating the wrong food, we're going to be sick. I hope you remember these words, okay? So, black versus white healthcare. What whites die from in the 60s and 70s, which many do, which can be the complications of diabetes, which can be prevented. Whites also. Blacks die in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Would you believe that, Angelo?
At a younger age.
At a young age. A lot of children, whites too, but more so in blacks, are developing diabetes as teenagers. As teenagers, we need to check the blood sugars in some instances of very young children, black and white, but blacks is worse. Their rate of hypertension among children has been found among the black population. How important is that? To catch a disease early is a way to prevent it, reverse it. All these diseases we're seeing, 90% of them could be prevented. Yes. And part of the reasons there's such racial disparity too is the cost involved, type of insurance, Medicaid, no insurance. A lot of black people on Medicaid in my corporation, which I was a member of. You used to have a rule we could only see 3 Medicaid patients a month because it didn't cover the cost of seeing the patient, no less a profit. I just ignored it. I ignored our corporate manager, and fortunately I survived it. But it's a problem, really, for a black person. They can't just go see any doctor. Some doctors don't take Medicaid at all. It can't be seen by this ex-specialist or doctor that a black person might want to choose. It's because they don't take Medicaid. We did, but we took a limited number. So what the government pays is important and results in differences in how we care for a person. And I'd also like to mention today, which I'm going to ask your opinion, Angelo, because I don't really have a clear explanation. I've been hearing on TV that maybe the black population is running a 30 to 40% vaccination rate. The people most people that are dying from this virus are the unvaccinated. But why this low rate in the black population? Angelo, answer that for me.
I think, in my opinion, that they're truly not well informed, and I think that's a problem across the board. If we did actually a fair not too long ago, with Healing at Home, and going over some of the stats there, we've seen a lot of people refusing to get vaccinated.
Yes.
However, we did find a few that did want to receive the vaccination, and we serviced them, as well as gave them information on diabetes and things of that nature, medical information that you provided for them.
Yeah, I think you get a good point, because I was with your daughter.
Yes.
And we were at a prison system, and very well run.
Very well.
and very well run. And I think Judge Wendy Davis is the one who started that, and we want to give her credit for that. But you're right. A lot of the people that we spoke to who had had some problems with the law but they seemed very interested. They were lacking information.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the leadership, our national leadership, needs to pass out the information better. CDC, NIH, president, vice president, all the politicians, state representatives, local public health. Public health failed us. I think they should be stronger and lead us with information. Some might say they're not funded well enough, but the message is confusing. But still, it's confusing to everyone, but that 30-40% of the black population is unvaccinated. The same information provided to blacks and whites, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have access to doctors as much, so it's complex. But thanks for answering that question, Angela. And certainly I enjoyed that day with your daughter and myself, speaking to the priests and people who had had some problems with the law. But when we discussed diabetes and things, it was information they hadn't had. So the school system failed them.
Yes.
The school system need to educate health a great deal better. Why the schools? They're not doctors. Well, that's something that's in common to all of us, the schools. And I think, in dealing with young children, is that I think the school system needs to step up to bat. And the government supports programs that are not healthy, like milk consumption for children. They won't give you the government money if you don't drink milk. Well, if you read about it, Whitewashed by Joe Keon, a book, you wouldn't drink milk. Would they put in cow's milk, the amount of chemicals, and the protein in milk is very unhealthy. So the government's involved here too. It is confusing. But some of that's improving. Also, some of the medical facilities that are available to the black community, some would say are not maybe as modern as the parts of town or the community that have more money. There's a difference. I've worked in both. Like all three hospitals in our town, for example, they will treat you, but there's no preventative treatment. I've been there. Very little preventative treatment, and that makes a difference. Okay, and for some in the community, they don't have access. The distance to a hospital is greater than something they can accomplish. They don't. A lot of them don't have a car, for example, and have to wait on a bus. And in this country, we have extremely poor bus system. And we have it, but I tell you, you might say, well, ours in Fort Wayne seems to be good. But let me tell you something. I've been in Switzerland. I was recently. Streetcar would be there about every 30 seconds. You're on the street, 30 seconds, there's a streetcar. Mm-hmm. You jump on and go to where you're going. And here you have to wait for hours, and then they're a half hour late. So there's a tremendous difference between public transportation in this country and other countries. Unbelievable difference, 10,000 to 1. I've been there. I have been there. And so the industrial complex is at work. Whoever's, paying the most, it affects all of us. And like the COVID-19, the virus, for example, killed more black people than white people. Well, why is that? Because the virus is a sugar eater, and blacks have twice the rate of diabetes than white people. Mm-hmm. Why is that type of food? What is available? Many are getting fast food. Maybe they're not educating them as well in the school system about what proper nutrition is. The neighborhood health clinic, which at a tiny association, maybe make it big in the future, the lady running it in Fort Wayne here, told me that everybody in their clinic is a diabetic.
Ooh.
Everybody. But yet, and they had diabetic educators there, but most of them represented the hospital system. I noticed the hospital system provides generally an office right next to most churches. Why is that? Because the minister in the churches keeps the people there. As you walk in, they hand you the donuts. You'll be back next Sunday. I've been to a church, I remember they had somebody walking by me with a plate, had probably 20 donuts on it. Right next door is a clinic from one of the hospitals. The main teacher of nutrition at that church is a nurse from the hospital system. Is a industrial complex at work? You bet it is. No one's teaching the people there how to get rid of that diabetes not have in the first place, which I can teach people about 4 or 5 weeks. I do it all the time, and yet this is a system the black population gets caught up in. I think they go to church at a higher rate than white people. I think their faith is stronger, even because I've been to both. It's my impression. And I know of one lady, a diabetic educator, who went to Africa, and they were eating such poor food. They were literally eating off the dirt or the ground. Mm. But they were very happy people because of faith in God. Yeah, isn't it interesting? She told me about that. And so we have a higher incidence of chronic disease because diabetes will cause dementia and gum disease. Almost all dental disease is to eating sugary products because the bacteria live off sugar. We need to teach people that. We need to teach kids in the schools that. I didn't know it till, frankly, I was in college, that you need to brush your teeth every day. No one told me. One of our attorney brothers walked up to me and said, "Rudy, would you brush your teeth? We have girls coming over." That's a true story. So I've been brushing my teeth twice a day ever since, and gargle it and twice a day, and I have very little problems now. But we need to teach people how to have better dental care, and I don't think the dentists are stepping up to bat. I don't see public health announcement on the TV about dental care. I think it's very important. I would say 80 to 90% of the black population has diabetes. And I'm hesitant to say that, but I would kind of like your opinion, especially in this is a judgment-free zone, but especially the black community, I'd say we have extremely high obesity rate, but higher among women than men. Mm. Yes.
That's interesting.
That's in this book.
Mm-hmm.
That's in this book. And to me, everyone that is overweight is diabetic unless you prove to me that you're not. The people may not think so, but they never had serum insulin or glucose tolerance tests to find that they do. And that's partly our doctors' faults. Our doctors are not properly testing them, although I've seen quite a few doctors who deal with the Asian and black community, and those doctors themselves look very unhealthy. So how can you be a promoter, motivator, and teacher? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I've seen some of this community where it was just totally out of hand.
Do you think the family and the upbringing has something to do with that as well? As you would mention, not having no knowledge of this here subject matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When after conception, and the mother, and she is now conceived, and the child is in the uterus, the mothers today keep on their bad habits of eating the wrong food, sugary food. The genetic code, the one determines your future, the DNA script, is a field called epigenetics. The mother is eating the wrong food, smoking, drinking, stressed out, high sugary foods are writing the genetic script of this infant. So when the infant is born, it's already sick. It has withdrawal from narcotics, nicotine withdrawal, drug withdrawal, underweight, overweight, all these and to top it all off, the majority of children born today are born through C-section. Well, in C-section, the child never passed through the vagina, which is full of bacteria, which would then go over the body, especially the face of the infant born, and those bacteria, which are living things, gut are living bacteria. Trillions of them are in your gut that run your metabolic system. The child does not have a gut formed from itself, from the mother, and maybe they don't want it because the mother's been eating poorly, but if she's been eating well, the child is born with a poor gut system and will have diseases already as a newborn. May have genetic changes where it is retarded or abnormal, small brain, or tremendous weight, or too skinny. So a mother, her health habits determine the child's future. So it's called epigenetics. A field you can read about is that, you're telling me, is that in your chromosomes, which determine your future, is a genetic script, and called telomeres, which are the end of the chromosomes, and they shorten as we get older. And they're much shorter and unhealthy. People call it Hayflick limit. So it's extremely important what the people are eating. Is this soul food? Is this Southern cooking where they're eating unhealthy foods? See, the blacks, for example, especially in slavery, would not be allowed to eat the best part of the food. They would, and so they would save the intestines, and they would eat the intestines and get used to that. So they were eating differently, and then developed a different genetic code too. Interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So the important things, what I suggest to the community of all races, is to start getting blood tests at age 3. Yes. I would get serum insulins and blood sugars and glucose tolerance test. And then you would catch people on the road to bad health much earlier. You can prevent all these chronic diseases that are filling our hospitals, from unannounced heart attacks. 80% of kidney disease is found in the black population. 80%.
80%.
If you go to dialysis center where they dialyze your blood 13 hours a week, you got to go in there and they run an IV and then they replace your kidney. The death rate, once you're in that 2 or 3 years, most of them are dead. So the prevention is the key. And that's what we're speaking about today. But most of the people don't know that. They're not aware of that. and it's our responsibility of us providers, and we're not doing it. We're not doing it. So, in our gut, okay, we eat something right away. Hormones, enzymes are secreted even in your mouth, and then it goes down the esophagus to your stomach, and different enzymes and different bacteria start going to work, breaking down your food. Called the micro, because they're very small. They're nano size. You're looking through a microscope, you wouldn't even see them. You need an electron microscope to see the bacteria. But there's trillions in your gut. They weigh 5 pounds, the whole thing together, your microbiome. They determine your future. Your microbiome is your future. And the living, crawling things, trillions. And it's interesting enough that your gut is, the outer lining is 1 cell layer thick. Those trillions of bacteria have a lifespan, don't fall off the chair, 20 minutes.
Oh my, yeah, that would have made
20 minutes. So, and their death rate is determined partly what you're eating. The 1 cell layer that protects, that are glued together, that don't allow bad food to go in there, 1 cell layer thick is replaced every couple of hours. Yes. So what we consume is extremely important for the bacteria and for our gut lining. Because if there's a hole in your gut, then bad food gets in and your body has to react, and that's what causes most diseases.
So it's actually good to have some type of diagnosis at a younger age.
Yes, because
roughly around 3.
because if you're starting to develop diabetes at age 5, you lose 2 or 3 pounds. We can teach you how to eat the right food. You see the point? Mm-hmm. We're preventing a tremendous amount of disease. If we were to take all children and check their blood sugar, their serum insulins, and a few other tests, their triglycerides, for example, we could catch them early before they develop these diseases. People are dying black people are dying in their 30s, 40s, and 50s from diseases acquired as a child, which could have been prevented. It's not taught in the schools. Pediatricians are at fault here too. They don't bring it up. They check your blood sugar with HbA1c starting around 10, 11. It should be a lot younger than that. And I've been and talked to the pediatricians involved, head of a pediatric state of Indiana, and he ended up doing nothing. I talked to him twice. Very intelligent guy. Wouldn't do anything. And but what does your biome do? Remember, it weighs around 5 pounds, about 5 pounds. They had 10 times more micro bacteria than human cells. We're outgunned, okay? General nutrition breaks down the food, is what they do. It starts in the stomach, okay? And they break down carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. It makes, those bacteria make certain vitamins too, like vitamin K, which is related to blood clotting. The gut bacteria make that. It regulates metabolism, energy, breaks down and builds up those 3 nutrients we mentioned. It detoxes things, downgrades cancer-producing cells, that kills them, and we excrete them. Helps renew gut lining cells. Remember we spoke about that? Mm-hmm. And supports the immune system. So our gut determines a lot of our immunity, how we can fight foreign viruses, bacteria, funguses that might come along. And and controls your weight. If you there are hundreds of different bacteria, but mainly the good ones are dominating, Firmicutes and Bacteroides, and one is is the opposite of the other, and depending which are the dominant ones depends on what you're eating, and they help determine your immunity, your ability to fight off disease, and so it controls your weight, whether you're obese or not, and it also creates some of our neurotransmitters, the enzymes that jump from the axon to the dendrite, those neurotransmitters, the ones that result in long-term relaxation are made in the gut. Serotonin, 80% is made in your gut by these bacteria. Would you believe it? So it's brain, gut, brain. And something most people don't know about. But you know from your own feelings, depending on what you're eating, determines how you feel. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm in heaven. Or you eat one of these donuts, for example, too sugary, not healthy, but it will go and release dopamine, and you feel like, I'm in heaven. And then the blood sugar goes down, and you say, I'm in hell.
So you mentioned that within the school system,
Yeah.
they do have tests that they give to the children before a physical, basically.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility, should the schools be interested, to actually do these testing at a young age?
Yes, they should. It would be if they were the proper test. A lot of the systems, they'll say, we're doing a test and we have a diabetes clinic, but if they're teaching the wrong thing, actually promotes a disease. A lot of the hospitals today run the testing systems, school systems, that help promote the illness because they are industrially all interrelated. When I show up and want them to start a prevention clinic or even walk through the cafeteria at the school, I'm locked out, although I'm a doctor. Yeah. I try to look at school cafeterias. Can't do it. And they state law prevents it. Would you believe it? Yeah. And so teaching kids is critical. Back in history, the black community was actually used for experiments. They'd run experiments. They would to see if that food would kill you. They did that years ago. Yeah, and now sometimes they don't have a mixture of whites and blacks when they try a new food because our biome is different. You know what I mean? So you don't really know. They make a general statement, but they don't really. But that general statement, based on studies, was it a properly mixture of what really exists in the community or not? And that, it is a problem. And let me read you a statement. I was in Washington, D.C. for a conference when we had President Obama. And I will admit, I really liked him, but before our conference, I sat outside to have lunch, and I watched the people walking by, and also there's a little bit of a park right in front of me, and I saw a lot of homeless people there. A lot of people just laying there, nothing to eat, eating the wrong food, and I ordered lunch, and I was sitting outside, and they were looking at my food. So I ate about a quarter of my food, and I did walk out there and gave it to them. But Michelle Obama lived there. You know what I mean? She saw all the homelessness. And then I saw a bus full of employees get out, and the majority were overweight. Now, I always thought that Obama and Michelle, and that they were really pro-changing things. And but this is her statement. It's right out of this book. Obesity isn't simply a deficit issue. In other words, lose weight, eat less. There's no one cause we can pinpoint. There's no one cause we can pinpoint. But I just can't agree with that. I can't agree with that. They're eating the wrong food. And for her to say that, very upsetting to me, to read it in this book. There's no one program we can fund, remember the government, to make it go away. She said that. Michelle, what are you saying? Rather, it's an issue that attacks the very issues of our lives, how we live, how we work. Of course it does. It affects that too. But the most important thing is what we eat. That is 80-90% of it. And why do we eat? Well, of stress and different conditions. I understand that. But just to throw in the towel and say, we accept all these chronic illnesses, no, I totally disagree. You go to Europe and you look at the people that look totally different. They look totally different. Something can be done about it. This is what we are doing today, but people have to step up. And that's not just the black community. Let's face it, what's going on with the guns right now, I think politicians and people need to step up and try to change it. Mm-hmm. But to say what she said and not step up to bat and to try to change things, I will say that same trip, I tried to go to these government buildings, NIH, CDC, all of them, to try to give my opinion. I'm a citizen. I pay a lot of taxes. I couldn't get in the door. Always said security there. You have an appointment, come back in a month, come back in a year. It was, I guess I should have known better, but it was educational for me. You know, I should have known better. And body image is important in how we look at ourselves. I think what's happened in the community, maybe they think being overweight means you're beautiful, you're sexy. Well, we have to look at this. I think this could be part of it. You know what I mean? The darn trouble is you're a diabetic and you're going to die young. You're going to die 20 years younger, and the last 20 years you're going to be disabled. They may amputate your legs. You may be blind. You may have dementia. You may have a heart attack. You may be already dead. You may have liver disease, kidney disease. That's your real picture. So I think we have truth distortion here a little bit. And but again, how do you change people's minds? To say that's not beautiful, you might say, you're insulting me. Well, it's a judgment. I'm not making a judgment. I'm speaking reality. But beauty and non-beauty may be a way to teach, to show pictures of people with amputated legs. They're diabetic, that's what's going to happen. Or that in men it destroys their sexuality. That indeed happens. I spoke to someone today that lost it. And I noticed from my experience as a neurosurgeon, people do respond. Visual teaching may be the best. I'm actually trying to teach myself here, wearing a red suit, is that in all my years of practice, I always wore fancy clothes, shoes or ties and jackets. And jackets, and the most likely person to say something nice about it, a black person. Clearly. So they have good taste. So we need to take advantage and say that being overweight and having these diseases is not beautiful. I think people think maybe that's sexy and beautiful. I'm telling you, it's not. When I see that, I know you're going to die young or you're going to be disabled. Cash, you're insulting me. No, I want you to live. I'm here because I love you.
That's a good
Isn't that interesting but there's no question. I knew the shoes especially. They love fancy shoes, and I didn't do it for me to feel good. I did it for them to feel good, because then we had a rapport, and I could bring up other things to change them. So I enjoyed seeing. I saw a great variety of people. I enjoyed that the most, and so. How we see ourselves greatly affects our well-being. Okay, and but like I said, we seem to have a little bit of a blind spot for body size, and but to recognize that you have a problem can be difficult. Men think it's a sign of success. You're a very heavy person. I noticed a lot of the very successful people down, even close to billionaires, the majority of them have diabetes. Yeah.
Eating the wrong foods.
Yeah, eating out twice a day. If you're eating out twice a day, it's difficult to be healthy. And you must be open-minded to maybe once. Also, I think time-regulated eating, maybe to just eat 2 meals a day, and you might get away with it. And I find if you can separate your meals, 8 hours, fast 16 hours, 8 hours, you eat, it almost doesn't matter what you eat, you're going to be healthy. That's in many books. I prefer if at least one of those meals be very healthy. What you eat, the other one doesn't count. Eat lots of food. In the time you're not eating, your body is cleansing itself, autophagia, repairing cells, new cells. Matter of fact, I went to have breakfast yesterday at Spiro's. Excellent place to have a variety of breakfasts. As I was paying my bill, 2 guys walked up and said, "Rudy, we want to pay your bill." And I said, "Why?" And they stepped back. And I knew them very well, and because they played tennis too. The one guy had lost 50 pounds. The other guy had lost 20 pounds. And I pointed at the guy with the 50 pounds, and he says, "Rudy, it's fasting. Fasting is the answer." And he named a book we read about, Jason Fung, F-U-N-G. He says, "You gave it to my friend Sullivan, and he gave it to me, and I want to thank you." Isn't it great?
That was wonderful.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Isn't that a wonderful story? But it's a true story. I've seen that a number of times. But to have it, that's, I don't charge people to tell them this. That's a hell of a thank you. That made my day. But I give it to you as an example that if you have trouble changing the food, just a time-regulated eating, fasting, goes back in history, thousands of years. But I'm not asking you to skip a day or a week. All I'm asking is to time-regulated eating. Don't forget that. That's really an easy way. And so how do we define, in the U.S., about 42% are obese, not overweight, obese, that's 30 BMI and over. 70% are overweight, 25 to 30 body mass index. In 1980, overweight children since that time have doubled. And among the adolescents, it's tripled.
Wow.
That's our future.
Yes.
That's our future. And this one is right out of this book. In the black community, it's even worse. Just think of that. This is not that I'm hammering away. It's that we must do something about it. And it needs to come from us. It will not come from the medical community. It will not come from the government. it'll come from us individual. We're going to have to learn what good food is, and of course, when we're overweight, as I mentioned, that results in 30, 40 chronic diseases, which I've reviewed, and what's causing all this? Personal and cultural, what we're eating, but culture is promoting it. Food advertising. When I see the advertisements on the television, what are the main advertisements I look at to the point I don't even want to watch television anymore? And what are they advertising? Diabetic drugs. Listen to them. Listen to them. If you follow this way of eating, you won't need any drugs. You won't need them. Get rid of the natural way. Eat the right food. About 9 different factors involved. A lot of food advertising, junk food advertised a lot. Highly addictive foods, sugar. You got to learn to read labels. As a matter of fact, I suggest if it's got a label, you don't eat it, because the many names of sugar and other products, the non-caloric sugars they mentioned at the end, sugar substitutes, sweeteners, for example, they have so many different names, and the sweeteners have no calories, but they affect your brain, your dopamine centers, your serotonin centers, and your gut biome. In the end, you're going to just crave them more. Don't use artificial sweeteners. And they think 23 million people live in food deserts. A food desert is 1 mile from a supermarket. But I learned to look for certain names like Trader Joe's, Aldi's, which are spread throughout most communities now. I see one Aldi inside of a black community, and I went there, walked through it. It's tremendous. I didn't see one black person in there. I've asked 10 black people since then if they knew if there was an Aldi's at the end of town. Never heard of it. So it needs to be brought up in the school system, in the churches, among the community, that there are stores available where the food is a lot healthier. And supermarkets, in general, maybe selling a bit cheaper, but if you look at these other stores, it's no cheaper than in the big general supermarkets. And so our genes do make a difference. I mean, if everybody in your family's got diabetes, there may be a 10% chance that you would get it. But what you eat and express the genes is more important. There are a few genetic diseases, but most of them are just what you do to stimulate the genes. Yeah. So just because every time Dick and Harry in your family, I was recently sitting at a tabernacle table, I think it was, and there was I think God did this. There must have been 8 family members, from grandpa to little children to 2-year-olds. They're all facing this way, eating, and when you look at them, all overweight, every one of them, all eating the same food. So it's a matter of the food that they're eating, not their genes. Maybe some gene expression because they all got it, but majority is what they are consuming. And so your microbiome, those bacteria which determine appetite and satisfaction, are very important. You need to educate your microbiome by feeding these guys, with proper food. I think this is extremely important. What are some signs by looking at somebody that they have a problem? Well, look, if they're overweight, you get a problem. 20% of the normal weight people have diabetes. So blood testing is number one. Get properly tested. And about getting serum insulin and blood sugar and glucose tolerance tests. If you're overweight, for example, and your blood sugar is normal, means nothing to me. The serum glucose tolerance test, where you swallow sugar, fasting 1 hour, 2 hours normal, means nothing to me. If you had a serum insulin test and a serum insulin tolerance test, and they're normal, I say probably you're not diabetic. Something important to remember. And we need to do those on children. And as we get older, we're more likely to have diabetes because the pancreas wears out. So it's important to keep it in mind because it causes significant disease in the elderly, including cancer. Cancer is a sugar feeder. Cancer is like the virus. It likes 13 molecules of sugar. The cancer grows on sugar. Most people with breast cancer had diabetes or one of those diseases. Yet all the money is sent by very rarely to Indianapolis for research. There are 30-odd genes that run breast cancer. Would you want to take 40 drugs? No. But if we taught the people how to eat properly, we'd be cutting our breast cancer rates tremendously.
Is there a reversal?
And that's a fight very badly could be leading, but they're not. I brought my books there. They said, we know obesity causes it. Well, why don't you join me in this war against obesity and diabetes? And no interest. Yet they build hotels and research centers, and the people of this town, who cares?
Is there a reversal process in the diabetes? Let's say from...
Yes. Let's just take the last minute that we have here. The easiest way really is 2 meals a day. And I mentioned that already. To eat about 50-60% good fats, okay? Good fats, and about 20% protein. If you eat too much protein, it gets converted to sugar. And about 15% vegetables and fruits at the top. They used to teach that 80% vegetable diet gets rid of these diseases. That helps. You live a little bit longer, but if you want to live to be 100, you start eating. And Susan Ryan writes an excellent book, pictures of recipes, good explanation. Look at my YouTube shows on diabetes. It's all there. Cashman Diabetes Support, FW.com, will lead you to a whole bunch of further information. So it's a matter of the way of eating. I'm glad you asked that question because, well, what's the answer, Dr. Cashman? Eat for 2 hours. If you eat one of the meals of the way I described, and the other one, eat anything you want to, odds are you will not have diabetes and there's complications. Save lots of money and live to be 100 and tap dancer with me or beat me in pickleball. Thanks, Angelo, so much for attending that I was able to ask you a few questions. And I know you have an interest in this subject, and that's why you're here, and I really appreciate that. So I hope we do this again.
I look forward to it, Doctor.
Yeah. And I already gave him one pickleball lesson.
Yes, I got one of them, and it's fun. It's fun. Yes.
So we love you. That's why we do this. Namaste. Thank you.